Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. It's been a while since I've done a video on Python, so I thought I would do a new one. And here we're going to be going over three things: Lambda functions, the map function, and the filter function. These are all sort of part of just typical sort of functional programming type methods, and they're good to know. So basically, before we get into functional programming, usually you would have functions like we did when we did functions in a separate video, where you would define the function name and then define the process, and you would call on the function. But sometimes you need a function just for one call, or you need a function nested in another function. And so you need a situation where you just might need functions you just need to throw into a parameter. So these are referred to as anonymous functions in functional programming. So functional programming is ideas where you pretty much do everything through functions. There's no classes, there's no objects. It's not object-oriented programming. So, and then the functions you do create are pure functions, which means you put input, and then instead of it modifying what you put into it, what it does, it gives you a whole new set of data that you can do with. Okay, so you'll see that these functions that I'm about to show you, map and filter, are pure functions. So we'll put in an array or a set or a dictionary, and it'll come out with sort of a new list. Okay, been doing a lot of JavaScript, so I've been using the term array instead of list more often lately. And on that note, if you go over to my YouTube channel, you can find it over there at alexmercedcoder.com. You'll find that I've created new playlists on teaching JavaScript, Go, and Clojure. So if you want to add some more programming languages to your tool belt, go check those videos out so you can learn the basics, so you can start the fun of teaching yourself. Okay, so first thing is a Lambda function. A Lambda is an anonymous function in the sense that the function has no name. So the syntax is you use the word lambda. That tells Python, hey, I'm gonna just do a quick function that has one expression. So lambda, and then x is my parameter. So lambda x. And you could do multiple parameters, but lambda x. So that means once I pass a parameter to x, this function will take x plus 2. Now, in this particular situation, I'm doing something unique in the sense that I'm taking this anonymous function, which basically just takes my x plus 2, and assigning it to the variable test lambda. So essentially, it's the same thing as if I wrote a function. This is actually becoming sort of the norm in JavaScript. So basically, anonymous functions in JavaScript are known as arrow functions, and nowadays it's becoming more common to write your function as an arrow function and assign it to a variable instead of your traditional function declarations. And you could do that in Python as well. The only difference is that a lambda function only takes one expression, so you can't really do complicated functions using lambdas. So you would still need your traditional function declaration. Okay, but I just go lambda x. So now anytime I use test lambda, it's a function. So in this case here, I want to print the result of test lambda passing in the parameter 5. Okay, so it takes 5 plus 2, so thus it's going to print 7, which you see over here was generated in the results. Okay, and I'll rerun it just in case so you can see. So 7. Okay, now here I'm doing the print function again, except I'm passing the lambda as the argument. So instead of putting it in a variable and then using it, I can just use it in the argument. Now, since print only takes the parameter of which you're printing, okay, this parentheses here represents the function that I'm passing through, and then this parentheses is the parameter to that function. So I'm saying, hey, give me the result of this function with this parameter, so is x plus 2, 8, which you see 8 over here. So you can use lambda functions by assigning them to a variable. You can use lambda functions inside your parameter list, which is useful for functions that take a function. Okay, in JavaScript they're called callbacks, where you pass through a function as a parameter. Same idea. The typical ones you see in functional programming are mapping and filtering, which you have in JavaScript arrays, and here you have in Python. Okay, with the map function and the filter function. So let's read through this. So I'm creating a variable called map_list. So this is a list that's been mapped. So I'm going to use the list function, so that way the result of what happens in here then gets turned into a list, which I will store in map_list. So what map does is that its first argument is a function. So I'm going to use the same lambda. So I could write a new lambda function, or I could just take this one that I passed into this variable over here and pass it through as my first. And notice I didn't declare the parameter this time. Why not? Because the way these callback functions work is that it's going to iterate over a iterable. So in this case, my list, which is this list over here. So it's going to say, take the first item in the list, which is 1, and then run this function on it. So it's going to pass 1 as a parameter. So I don't need to declare a parameter because I'm telling the function map, whatever my second thing is an iterable you're going to use as you're going to pass that first function. So it takes 1, passes it to this, which adds 2 to it, and then does it again for 2, does it again for 3, and then what it does, it returns a new list, or returns these pieces of data as a map item, and then the list function then takes that and turns it back into a list, which I can then assign to this variable, and then print it as a list, which is what you see right here. So see, it's all my numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, with 2 added to each one because we use that test lambda. So that's what map does. So if I need to do something to every single item in a list, I can use map and it'll do the same thing to every item in the list. Okay, filter list, what it does is that you're going to pass through a function that returns a Boolean, true or false. And what it does is that if it returns false, it's going to return you a version of your iterable without the things that only with the things that returned true. So in this case, I wrote instead of creating a function and passing it through, I just did a lambda in its place. So here I don't have to wrap the lambda into separate parentheses because it's not being treated as a function that needs a parameter again. It's just the function. So lambda x modulus 2, so is the number divisible by 2 equals 0, which is I'm just saying if the number is divisible by 2, if it's an even number basically, then it's part of the list. And then what are we testing? My list. So it's going to go through each of these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and test. Is it even? Is it even? Is it even? Is it even? And whenever it hits true, which would be 2, 4, 6, 8, it'll return those, which then gets turned. So the filter will only return the ones that return true based on this function. And then the list will take this and turn it into the result of this and turn it into a list, which is stored in filter list. And then I'm going to print filter list, which you see the result right here. Cool. So that's how those work. So you can do, that's pretty useful. So if you wanted to create a list of, hey, who has a name that's more than 5 characters, if you wanted to literally filter any kind of iterable for anything, you can do that. And then map, if you need to change, like if you need to capitalize the first letter in everyone's name, you can create a function that capitalizes and then basically go through every name in a list, every string in a list, and capitalize them using the map function. So these are pretty useful. And the thing is that the original my list hasn't changed at all. Okay, that's what we mean by a pure function. I'm passing through my list, but it is not changing my list. So if I were to print my list, you'll see it has not changed. And there it is. Okay, that's what we mean by a pure function. I can pass through the same data. It's going to give me the same results every time, and it did not edit the original data. That's the definition of a pure function, which is essentially what functional programming is all about, doing everything through pure functions. Okay, it's one of 4 programming paradigms, which you can learn all the other ones by watching my videos over there on my YouTube channel. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great one. Ciao.